Josh Hastings out of Virginia. He's with Money Life Wax. Is also a high school teacher with myself. So we are missing our students right now, doing virtual, and we get to hop on here, talk about side gigs and earning extra income. So how did you get into this business, Josh, as a teacher, as kind of just doing the side hustle gig?
Yeah, so no, thanks for having me, and I'm excited to share. Anytime you can talk about finance, and especially in the climate we're in now, right? Like, people sometimes say money's not everything. I'm like, okay, well, what are you thinking about right now during the pandemic? They're like, money. I'm like, so maybe it is everything, but no, it's not everything. But yeah, I was a teacher, I was an athletic director, I was a high school wrestling coach, and long story short, I've always had like an entrepreneurial spirit. If you read my side hustle guide, I talk about when I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. I went to the grocery store and then went to like a Cannons game, and basically I got all these free coupons. And then the next day I went door to door and sold them for $1 to $5 each. My mom thought I was crazy. And, I got into the real world and started working. I had some student loans. My fiance had over multiple six-figure student loans getting her doctorate. And we quickly realized that we could save our way and live a frugal lifestyle. That was definitely one way. The second way was obviously, cutting back your expenses. And then the third way that people often forget, I think, about when it comes to finance is making more income. And
Right.
making more income is exponential, whereas you can only save so much. I mean, if you only make $4,000 a month, you can only cut out so much living expenses before you can't cut out anymore, whereas you can always increase your exponential income. So I had always done like landscaping and those kind of types of side hustles. This was before they were called a side hustle. It was just called like odd jobs, summer work, things like that. And
Right.
then actually so I've always been kind of like a writer. 2017, I was going to write a book. And I read that you should start a blog. And I was like, this is kind of fun. Started an awful blog. It was called Money Life and the Whole Ball of Wax, hence the name Wax. Consolidate to Money Life Wax. And here we are almost 2.5 years later, and things are going really well. And I run a digital marketing agency, all self-taught. I mean, the blog was 100% self-taught. I mean, obviously I used articles and YouTube to get there, but the digital marketing agency came because I learned how to navigate that blogging world. And here we are.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I guess, like passions and kind of educating. I got this really great advice yesterday that training and certifications don't matter as much when you're trying to really be committed to earning extra income for yourself. So you talk a lot about the self-taught, YouTube, other sources. What's the biggest like advice if I'm right now in this COVID-19 crisis, don't know when I'm going to return back to work kind of thing, and want to make extra income, got to pay my bills, whatever. How do I figure out my passions? How do I guess, learn per se? What's like the number one thing I should probably start with?
I mean, it's going to sound cliche. It's so easy, though. It's just you have to take action, right? And it's so funny. I'm reading a book that's over 100 years old. It's a Napoleon Hill book. And he talks about education is not knowing, education is doing. I read that last night, and it's so true, right? Because you could know how everything works. Someone recently reached out to me on Instagram, like, love your blog. I've been thinking about starting a blog for 2 years. And I was like, just start it. Like, you're not going to be good at it unless you start. Like, think about a baby, right? Imagine a baby trying to learn to walk, and they fell. And they're like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. And they never learned to walk. They just crawled the rest of their life, and there's a 30-year-old just crawling on the ground. You'd be like, that's so weird. What happened? Well, unfortunately, sometimes we forget to take action in our life. And so my biggest piece of advice is write down maybe 10 things that you really are passionate about or that you enjoy. You don't have to be passionate. That's kind of a misconception. Like, not every day am I passionate about typing 3,000 words on the computer. But I enjoy it to the point where I see myself doing it quite often. So write some things down, circle 3, and then see how you can just start taking action. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. You don't need certifications. I don't have like any digital marketing certifications, but I have a pretty reputable blog that shows proof that I know what I'm talking about. And people at the end of the day, they want results. They don't necessarily want the fact that you have a degree or a certification. They just want results. And so you can offer results in anything that you may be good at. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, for sure. And Travis wants to know what Napoleon Hill book you're reading.
So it's called the Magical Success Ladder. And I've read like a bunch of his books. But this is one my wife got. She's a big reader. You guys can see our library back there. It's called The Magical Success Letter. A little weird. I mean, some of the stuff he says, just is a little bizarre, 100-year-old references, but it was just funny. He talked about saving money, and he talked about education is not knowing, education is doing. And he used the Henry Ford thing. Have you ever heard of Henry Ford's court trial?
Yep.
Where they start asking him all those questions, and he goes, I don't know the answers. I don't fill my brain up with that. I'll just pay people who know the answers. So.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So tell us a little bit, like, how did you, I guess, launch the Money Life Wax? What's been life like as a blogger? I know you have your curriculum workbook as far as side hustle gigs.
Yeah.
If I want to be taking action right this second, what would that look like as far as how do I get started? What's the biggest advice, biggest mistake, maybe?
Yeah. So I don't think, as far as getting started with my blog, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of the person, I'm very impatient. And it's been a very good asset in some areas of my life, not so good in others, right? But like when it comes to taking action, I'm like, yeah, let's just do it and I'll figure it out. And one thing I will say is that if you're looking to create passive income is going to require two things, either time or money, or usually a little bit of both. My blog runs me, there's some expenses. You can start a blog for pretty cheap and not really have a lot of expenses. And then as it grows, you can therefore grow your expenses. But what's cool is it brings in enough income to warrant that. And so that's just one thing. But dog walking is probably not the best industry right now to get into. But
Right.
Dog walking literally takes no expenses. It takes a couple word of mouth. So if you want to take action right now, my friend had a great post recently. He said, if you're thinking about action, look at what's needed right now during the pandemic, and that's maybe what you can do. That's one idea. So masks, right? Like people need masks. I mean, I don't know if you can sew, you can make masks. Service industries, people need how cool would this if you started some sort of grocery delivery? I mean, the Instacart people they're protesting. If you're healthy, you're young, and you have a bunch of older neighbors, maybe you go do a grocery service. It's not ideal. It's very active. I'm always thinking of ways to go passive, but what I will say is even with like a blog, everything you first do is always going to be active before it becomes passive. I think the only true form of passive income would be maybe real estate or investing. But even real estate, you have to deal with tenants. Even investing, you have to deal with the market. So it's always going to be active to start. You just got to start somewhere. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, definitely. And I talk a lot about as well is starting with your vision and what do you value most. We're definitely kind of in a situation of wanting to give back and give generously. So even as far as, the grocery delivery, there's opportunities I see to be giving generously, taking care of your neighbors, and growing more word of mouth. Because when we're out of this situation, who knows what's going to come. Right. And I got really good perspective as far as we think about what businesses launched during the Great Recession and where they are now. So I don't know if you know some of them, but it's really interesting to think about what businesses are still around that launched through the Great Recession and just that optimism of we're going to get through it together.
I think a lot of your pharmaceutical companies came out of the recession.
Yeah.
Something I always tell my wife, like a pandemic emergency kit, right? And it sounds crazy, but like a mask and a couple other things. You buy those things that go in your car. It's like the emergency kit on the side of the road. Imagine if you had one of those for pandemics, which I'm hoping this is the last one. I think it's going to wake everyone up financially in a good way. I think it's going to. You always have to look at the positive of the situation too. It's not ideal. It sucks, but at the end of the day, what are the positives you can take? Okay, I'm never going to get caught with my pants down again and not have 9 months saved up in an emergency fund. The government, I hope, will never get caught in this position where they don't have enough supplies for the people. I hope they have contingency plans. So you got to look at the positive. And then as far as vision, I think the only true way that something becomes, I think passion's a little overrated, but the only true way you'll stick with something is if your values align with it or you truly feel like you're helping people. So, when people read my blog and they say, oh my God, it's so motivational to see how much debt you guys have paid off. That's my goal. It's not to brag about us. We could care less. I'd rather not have debt. I'd rather not have it. I wish I was saving it all. I could understand if you were saying we're bragging about saving money, but paying off debt is not bragging. But I'd rather people know they can do it, and most people aren't going to have as much as us. And one of our big goals is just to help 20 families in 2020 become debt free. Whether that's directly with our involvement or just someone, hey, you know what, we decided to pay off our debt because I read this one article and now we're debt free at the end of the year, or we're on a progression to get debt free. So that's one of our visions. And I think if you do anything, knowing why is important too.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. What, as far as that vision of helping 20 families become debt free, I know you talked a lot about making it about $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
What advice do you have to people? What do you offer? What do
Yeah.
you suggest?
So, I mean, I always, I think, and I don't know if this is true, but I think in 2008, I heard that the recession for most families, the make or break amount of money was about $300. Okay. $300 was the difference between whether they paid all their bills and they could sustain a little bit of a lifestyle versus if they didn't. And so to me in 2020, $1,000, it's just hitting the comma club, having those four digits come in. It changes so much. I'm working on a graphic right now. And if someone were to save, let's say someone makes 50,000 a year and they were to save 15,000 years and invest that $15,000, in 20 years, they'd have $500,000. So if they invested $15,000 a year for 20 years at a 6.5% return, $500,000. So let's just say you go make an extra $1,000 a month on the side. That's 12, and then you save $3,000 from your salary. That's $15,000 right there. So $1,000 it's a game changer. It covers the mortgage. It expedites debt payments. It pays off cars. There's so many ways to create $1,000, whether it's dropping your expenses and making more money, combination of both, one or the other. But that much money it's a game changer. And so I don't know if you've asked ways to go about doing that or ideas to do that. It's not going to happen overnight, to be very honest with you. It's going to take 6, 7, 8 months. But, I always share a story. I started blogging. One of my friends had a company doing very well. Long story short, he needed someone to help on the internet. I did talk to another guy who helped me get my start in some areas. Long story short, I was like, hey, $1,000 a month. Sound good? He's like, yeah, that sounds perfect. The other guy was trying to charge me $3,000 a month. So I helped him, saved him money, and before you know it, I had a $1,000 client that I was. Now you have to go add value to that client, and you have to be able to help them and show your value. But it didn't happen overnight. But because I just started a blog and had no clue what I was doing, 6 months later, I had enough of a clue to go make some money with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely great advice. I want to tell everyone, thanks so much again for tuning in, being messy with us as the Zoom was not connecting properly to Facebook. But I do have the phone open. So if you have questions, please pop them into the comments and I will definitely read them. I know Josh also has his phone open as well. So if there's any comments flowing in, let's definitely get those answered as we talk about how we can be sourcing abundance of money right now and being really creative with different side gigs and just extra income. We talked earlier in the week as far as different unemployment benefits, and now's the opportunity to source how are we going to bring in extra income right now when so many of us are suffering. So we can be generous at the same time. We can take our talents, which is exactly what we're doing right now. I mean, we both are very passionate about financial literacy in addition to teaching high school students. So we're still educating, and that's, at least for me, is the big vision is just educating and empowering and whatever means it is, we get to do that. And as you can see, we're obviously still making it work with holding the phone up to the computer. So because we still have that vision aligned and how we can make money. So I know, I guess I look at as far as what are the biggest tips as far as getting launched, getting going, making money to ultimately pay my costs from month to month. I mean, what should I be doing? I mean, I guess if you could say where I should start, I mean, yes, we all have so many passions but I always say there's a difference between the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur. You have to grow a passion into a money driving business.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now that's the $1 million question. I'm not going to pretend to know all the answers. Like if I were to say, yeah, you should go do this, this, and this, make money. It's going to be an interesting 60 days. 60 to 90 days seems to be the general consensus before our life starts to resemble some sort of normalcy. I think that everyone in the world, or at least let's talk about the United States because we can't control the whole world, but like let's talk about here. Everyone's in the same boat, and so to speak. They're impacted one way or another, whether they lost their job, whether they lost their income, or their spouse. So I think not freaking out is very important. I think people need to first cut their expenses to a bare bone minimum during times like these and to really just be smart. But there's no reason why you can't hustle for the next 60 or 90 days to set yourself up for after to recoup. And so, figuring out sometimes people seem to think very short term. And I always say, think of the long term. Like as hard as it may be right now to not think about what is going on. Because I told someone to go online tutor. There's a million people right now trying to go online tutor. But you know what? If you are healthy and you really need income, I know like Walmart's hiring. Like that's not ideal. That's not a side hustle in my mind. That's a part-time job. But if you need money right now, that's something you can do. Or if you have the ability to wait it out, but don't just wait for 60 days and then decide to start something. Like figure out what it is you want to do and start it. Because, if you're stuck at home and you don't have a job, sitting around is not going to help you get anywhere. So maybe it is you start that company. I mean, if it's in a traditional small business, file for your LLC, start getting your business plan working, start getting your account set up, get a graphic design on Canva for free. Start doing all the little nitty gritty things that require. And then the last thing I say is like, you don't have to be perfect. I said it earlier, but like so many people want everything perfect before they start and they never start. It's like, just start, just go get the LLC and just file for it. Create a Facebook page, create an Instagram page, create some logos, start tapping
even
into
before, right? I mean, exactly. I mean, even before, and I'll just share as far as where I'm taking Master Your Money Academy. I mean, I'm not filed for an LLC yet, and so I want to tell you. I mean, if it is the opportunity you're going, don't feel that it has to be set up. And it is like what we talked about earlier. Is just taking that committed action and being committed to it, and trusting that things will kind of fall into place as we go. So I don't know if anyone kind of saw the emails popping up as we're going, but that's actually my business coach who is emailing me. So for example, I have already established on social media and now doing a program on more of the business coaching. I see the vision for it and want to go. But I started this like 2-3 weeks ago. So it's all coming together. So don't wait until you have the plan figured out and it's all lined up. I mean, I'm not lined up as an LLC and don't have a source of income yet, but I just by even doing this, I mean, I'm sourcing those options. And I think right now is a great way to even be networking for whatever we want to be creating. I definitely encourage those opportunities, network out, get exploring. So like you said, so many YouTube videos out there to just learn, which is awesome.
Yeah, I didn't start my LLC until like 7 months in either. So like, that's not something you have to do.
Right.
The only reason I did start it though is because I had like clients and just legality issues. It's easier. But yeah, with social media, I mean, it's so simple to start anything. You start a Facebook page and an Instagram channel or like, I mean, you don't have to blog, you don't have to Instagram. You can like, what about YouTube? Like, let's say you have an infinity and you love, I don't know, cooking. Maybe you start finally cooking and recording it and putting it on YouTube because you have the time, right? And then you know what? You have 1,000 subscribers and now you can monetize it. I mean, the opportunities are endless now. I'm sure you've heard the term, paradox of choice. When people have too many choices, they don't know where to go. I almost think, if you saw my post today on Instagram, it's called paralysis by analysis. So many people, there's so many things moving on, they don't even know how to take action. It's just, like you said, taking action. Like, go make your Facebook page. That's a start. People go, what if my friends and family, I don't want to be embarrassed. Okay, well then don't tell them. At the same time, if you're going to do something that shouldn't be going through your head, I always said, like, if people don't pay your bills, they shouldn't have a say on what you do to go create income to pay those bills.
Yeah, totally spot on. And that's big things that I've learned even through hardcore leadership is that you get to be in the driver's seat of your financial future. So if you're wanting to start making income, side gig, whatever, go for it. I mean, now's the time to take that risk. So many millennials, young professionals, you have that ability to be riskful, and you get to be innovative at the same time. I mean, I'm even talking to adults, for example, got one person who makes jewelry, and I was like, oh, now's the time to like be taking that online. Can you be innovative and still in the same path? And I suggested to her, I'm like, teaching jewelry classes, keeping little kids occupied. Mom and dad want 2 hours of time, just a way to get their own work done too. So can you tap into that market? And I was sharing, I'm like, even like charging $10, $15 for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, is mom and dads are going to eat that up. So
Yeah.
what are you passionate about? What are you good at? Tapping into those kids as well, for sure. So Travis, I want to let you know, I also technical difficulties. I cannot see the full message of your first comment. So Josh and I will respond to that afterwards, or if you want to chunk it down into smaller sections, we can get to it on the live. But the see more button is not working while we're live right now. But for your second question, for those of us with a more advanced knowledge, what is a good resource for fresh perspectives?
So in a sense that like you know a lot and maybe you're kind of plagued by the inaction piece, is that what you think? And then like how do you go get a fresh perspective?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I know Travis works in finance. I guess give us some more details. I don't know if you've got another side gig per se, Travis, that you're working on. But as far as good resource for fresh perspectives, share a little bit more, maybe what your goals are. I know as far as like if you're trying to take your business to the next level and you're committed to that, then absolutely reach out. I've got resources for you, but I would say probably fresh perspective. I mean, I would say being very clear on your intention and vision.
Yeah, I mean, fresh perspective, right? Like, if you're in like, let's say you're in your financial planner and you're like, okay, I'm really good at this, but I don't really see myself going home and doing this, right? Like, I've thought about starting like an educational blog, and while I love education, I wanted to educate people in a different way. So I chose money. It's something I've always been interested in. I think it's what makes the world go around. It sucks that that's the way it is, but that's the thing that most people have. You go look at our big calls, my wife and I personally, is that we don't like divorce, and it happens, but we come from divorced families, and most divorces are by and large because of money issues, right? So that's why we chose money.
Right.
So maybe if you're into financial planning, but you don't want to see yourself doing that, you're looking for a fresh perspective, read a couple books. I don't know, Atomic Habits is an amazing book. You're reading that. I read it. It's just awesome. Grant Cardone will smack you in the face. I love his stuff. Gary Vaynerchuk, those guys are all awesome. So read some of their content, and then maybe think like complete opposite, right? Like I've heard of people starting like my wife works with a guy in the medical field who his dream is to like lead outdoor excursions. So completely different like sides of the brain, completely different everything. And so maybe just think about what it is that you really enjoy and you spend a lot of time, like, people, obviously you can't be like a professional Netflix watcher if that's what some people do, but think about something maybe completely opposite that gets you excited. But then keep in mind too, 2, 3, 4, 5 months in, the excitement is going to wear off. There's something called blogger burnout, where I think in the average of the first 3 to 5 months, some crazy amount of bloggers are done. Well, you're not going to get results in 3 to 5 months in anything. You're going to get small results. You're going to get baby wins, but you're not going to get the results you're expecting. I always tell people, if you expect to make $1,000, you'll be grateful to make 100. So that way, if you expect to make 10,000, then you'll start making 1,000, right? Because at the end of the day, the results are always a couple months behind where you're at, in my opinion. So I hope that helps Travis with that question.
Yeah. Aaron has a question for us, a little bit different than side gigs. I have the option to pay more than the minimum on student loans. Should I invest that money or apply it towards debt? Actually, a very good question.
Yeah.
And I will say you'll probably get a lot more insight on that next Friday. Travis, who was hopping on, is our guest. He's a financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual. And I would just say it probably depends on your, I guess, investment strategy. Definitely, I mean, it's important to pay off debt. It's also important to invest into our future at this time. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Josh, as far as stock market right now, investments, or paying down the student loan debt.
It's very tempting to stop paying off our debt and just to go invest right now. But I think it just really depends on your situation. during these times too. The most common advice is just to keep doing what you're doing. So I personally, we're going to keep paying off our debt. For us, the mental stress we won't have any stress when our debt is gone, right? Like, I mean, we have very minimal stress as it is. Just being worth zero, having no debt. Depending on your age, but if you're like 22 or 23, I would focus all my efforts on paying off debt, and you can make up the investing later, right? Some people will do the math and they're like, well, 7% investment versus 5% loan. You're right. 2% might long term, you might see that. But if you go pay off all that debt, that's a lot of freed up cash that you can then turn invest. And the last thing I'll say is there's no wrong answer, because if you're doing one or the other, you're doing a great job. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. For sure.
you're doing something for your future, whether you're getting debt free or paying it off. We always say we're grateful for our debt, because if we didn't have debt, we probably would have done nothing to change our situation. I wouldn't be sitting on this call. We wouldn't have nearly the financial, I guess, foundation that we've built over the last 5 years. And we would just probably be living like everyone else, paycheck to paycheck, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, really great question, Aaron. I'll shoot you a message afterwards and we can definitely chat more. But then that's just a great preview into what we're talking about next Friday as well. So there'll be lots more information for you, Aaron, for sure. And then I just want to say thank you all so much